"We thought you'd find your way back." She didn't whisper it, she said it loud enough for the waitress to hear. The sign outside the diner flickered, "Half dead, all-day breakfast, open late." Inside, the air smelled like burnt coffee and thawed hash browns. I remember the waitress wore cherry-shaped earrings and a name tag that said Glenda. Funny, the things you remember when your world's about to crack. I had only gone to the bathroom 5 minutes, I even rushed. Because I knew how my stepmother hated waiting. When I came out, the booth was empty, their plates were cleared. My jacket was gone, the car keys gone, the car itself gone. I walked outside, convinced it was some cruel joke. Maybe they'd moved the car, maybe my dad would be waiting just around the corner with that same tired smile. And say, "We thought you'd find your way back." But all I saw was asphalt and night. And then I heard her voice, Glenda, the waitress, called out behind me. "Sweetheart, are you okay?" I opened my mouth, but the words caught. My chest felt like it had collapsed in on itself. That's when I saw the taillights, far off down the road. Just before the bend in the highway, the car didn't slow, didn't turn around. Glenda followed my gaze, her mouth parting slightly. "Was that your folks?" Behind her, the kitchen door swung open. And another waitress passed by and said, soft, like she thought I couldn't hear. "That woman said she's not their responsibility anymore." And just like that, my knees buckled, I dropped onto the curb. My duffel bag falling open, a pair of jeans, a second-hand toothbrush. A dog-eared library copy of Jane Eyre, My Life in a Bag, torn wide open. I didn't cry, not then, I think shocked as that. It freezes you in place, like your body hasn't caught up to your heart. Glenda brought me a hot chocolate and a blanket. She asked if I wanted to call someone, I shook my head. I didn't even have a phone, theirs had been cut off weeks ago. My prepaid one was inside the glove compartment, left behind like me. I waited at the edge of the parking lot until the air turned blue with cold. And the last semi-truck rolled through town. I don't remember if I hoped they'd come back, maybe I did for a while. There was a plastic window at the bus stop across the road. It had a scratch through the center that split my reflection in two. I looked into it for a long time, not because I was admiring anything. Numb, I was just trying to recognize her. The girl in the cracked glass, her shoes didn't match, her coat was too thin. Her lips were trembling from cold and confusion. But there was something else under the surface, something steel-like, starting to rise. I wasn't weak, I was just tired of being disposable. And for the first time, I stopped waiting to be chosen. I picked myself up, I zipped my bag shut. I looked down that long road and thought, let them leave, I'll find my way. The first place I slept after they left me was behind a gas station. Curled between a dumpster and a loading crate. A janitor named Rick tossed me a bag of chips before his shift. And muttered, "Get somewhere warm before midnight, cops get twitchy." I didn't tell him I had nowhere warm to go, I didn't tell anyone. By the end of that week, I traded my library book for a bus pass. And followed the sunrise west. The next town over had a diner with a crooked "Help Wanted" sign taped to the door. I stepped inside, half frozen, wearing the same clothes from the night they drove away. The manager gave me a once-over, then a name tag. He didn't ask for references, I didn't offer. I wiped tables, cleaned the men's bathroom, burned my wrist on the griddle 3 times that first month. Slept in the storage room on a pile of old tablecloths when the winter storms knocked out the shelter's heating. No one knew. I told them I lived just outside town. I worked doubles, took the shifts no one wanted, never complained. Because I remembered what it felt like to be left. I remembered her voice, my stepmother, from 100 tiny moments. "Can you just watch Maddie for a bit? I need to rest." "You're not going to college this year, right? We need someone in the house." "It's not a sacrifice, you're part of this family." I was, until I wasn't. But I stayed quiet back then. Silence felt safer than being seen. And here's the part they'll never know. I paid the electric bill when Dad's checks bounced. I cooked dinner every night while she watched TV. I helped my little sister with math homework while they fought behind closed doors. I turned down 2 scholarships because home needed me. I gave and gave and gave, and still, the car drove away without me. There were nights I stared at the ceiling in that diner storage room and wondered what I did wrong, what part of me was so easy to erase. But I didn't break. I folded napkins until my hands bled. I memorized coffee orders like they were scripture. I saved every tip in an old coffee tin labeled college fund. Even if I didn't know when or if I'd ever use it. I became invisible by design, because invisible people can move without being watched. And every day I woke up and made eggs for strangers. I repeated the same thought like a prayer. They thought I was quiet, they didn't know I was dangerous. 5 years later, the town looked smaller than I remembered. Or maybe I had just outgrown the version of myself that used to shrink inside it. The gala was held at the old conservatory. The kind of place where chandeliers hung like gossip and laughter echoed louder than truth. It was a fundraiser for youth arts programs. Sponsored, ironically, by companies that hadn't hired a young person in decades. I arrived alone, a black dress, simple, elegant, no jewelry. Just a silver pin in the shape of a compass on my lapel. One of the only things I'd kept from the diner days. A reminder that I never got lost, I chose my direction. The room was gold-lit and crowded with people who'd once called me invisible. Men in tailored suits shook hands with women wearing names like credentials. I kept my distance, watching them swirl around wine tables and silent auction displays. Then I heard her voice. Didn't know they were hiring out-of-town help now. It slid across the room like a blade wrapped in pearls. My stepmother stood at the wine table, holding a glass like it was a crown. Her hair was darker than I remembered, dyed, brittle at the ends. But her smile hadn't changed, it still dripped condescension. She hadn't recognized me, of course not. To her, I was still the girl in scuffed shoes, washing dishes in silence. The one who slept on floors and left without making a scene. I watched her sip her drink and lean toward a woman in blue sequins. "That one looks familiar," she whispered, "probably another intern." I didn't respond, not then. Let her talk, let her laugh. Let the room breathe in her ignorance like smoke. Then the lights dimmed, and the announcer took the stage. Tonight's lead sponsor wishes to remain anonymous but has agreed to say a few words. The spotlight turned on me. I walked to the stage, calm, slow, deliberate. I could feel the temperature in the room shift, heads turned, conversation stopped mid-sentence. My heels clicked against the marble floor like punctuation marks. I took the microphone, let the silence sit, then I smiled. Actually, I'm tonight's featured sponsor. A few people gasped, my stepmother went pale. But thank you for reminding me how far I've come. The applause didn't come right away, it never does when the air is too thick with shame. But then it did, louder than expected, and the cameras followed me as I stepped down. Not toward her, but away. I didn't even glance her way, but I saw it. The way her hand trembled around the wine glass. The way my father, standing behind her, lowered his head, pretending to examine a painting on the wall. He still hadn't said a word, and somehow, that silence hurt more than all her insults combined. But I didn't come here for closure, I came to deliver a message. I don't need your table, I built my own. I didn't explode, I expanded. That's the thing no one tells you about rock bottom, it's solid. And if you plant something deep enough, even grief can grow roots. I started small, always small. A blog where I posted simple recipes and nighttime meditations I had once whispered to myself to survive. A handmade candle line, poured in a friend's basement. A self-care starter kit, cobbled together from discount store notebooks and dollar store face masks. But it resonated, not because it was flashy, because it was real, raw, quietly defiant. The brand grew slowly, then all at once. One feature in a regional newsletter became a viral TikTok by a retired school teacher. Orders poured in from women across the country. Women who had also been erased, overlooked, displaced. Women who saw something in the way I signed each box. You were not too much, you were just planted in the wrong garden. By year 3, I had 2 full-time employees and a warehouse lease. By year 4, a venture capital firm came knocking. I said no, because I didn't want to be owned. By year 5, a glossy magazine slid across the cafe table. On the cover, top women under 30 reshaping the wellness economy. I didn't smile, but I didn't cry either. I had no one to call, no one I wanted to call. Instead, I walked to the park and sat under a tree I used to hide beneath as a child. And for the first time in my life, I felt full. I didn't know the unraveling had already started. My father's financial empire, propped up by aging clients and shallow partnerships, was crumbling under federal scrutiny, some shady accounting, a whistleblower, headlines. My stepmother's lifestyle, her Botox, spa weekends, imported wines, began to weigh more than their mortgage. The whispers circled their gated community like crows. And then came the final reversal. The same local entrepreneurship summit they used to sponsor every spring, they were dropped quietly, without statement. The new keynote speaker, me. I stood backstage that night, dressed in navy, no sparkle, just tailored control. I adjusted the lapel of my blazer and felt the weight of the silver compass pin, still fixed there. A producer asked if I needed a teleprompter, I said no. The MC's voice rang out, tonight's keynote is a woman who rose from nothing. Whose story is not just one of business, but of transformation. Applause, flashbulbs, a sea of faces. And in the back row, row 12, far from the sponsors' table, I saw them. My father, my stepmother, sitting where they once ruled. Clapping with robotic precision, smiling as if they hadn't lost everything. I didn't address them, not directly. But I said one thing before I stepped off that stage. Some people are born into power, others build it from scrap. And brick by brick, we remember who we are. That night, my phone buzzed with a message from a number I hadn't seen in years. Maddie. They need help, please, they're not okay. I stared at the screen for a long time, longer than I should have. And then I typed, "You left me at a bus stop, I built the highway." And I hit send. The dinner was held in a private room on the top floor of the old courthouse building, converted now into something polished and soulless. The kind of place where bad people made good deals over rosemary lamb and low lighting. I arrived 10 minutes early, not out of eagerness, out of control. The maitre d' greeted me like I was royalty. I suppose in this town, I was. He guided me through a velvet-curtained hallway to a room so quiet it rang. Inside, a round table dressed in white linen, candlelight catching the crystal edges of wineglasses. Everything meticulously arranged for something that smelled like reconciliation or pretense. They were already seated, my father, my stepmother, his old business partner, Roger Hemsley, the man who once patted my head like a dog and told me, "Girls like you grow into wives, not CEOs." Now he stood to shake my hand. "Look at you," he said, with practiced charm. "All grown up, you've done well for yourself." I didn't bother smiling. The waiter poured wine. My stepmother wore pearls and a polished expression, as if nothing had ever fractured between us. As if she hadn't gutted me and left me bleeding in silence 9 years ago. "We've all made mistakes," she said softly, watching me. "But we always knew you'd be special." My father said nothing, of course, he just cut into his steak and chewed, eyes fixed on his plate, like it might offer him a way out of the evening. The conversation danced around the real reason we were here. He hinted at collaboration, at shared values, at fresh starts and strategic legacy partnerships. Translation: they were out of options, and I was their last. But I didn't come to invest, I came to end it. Halfway through the second course, I reached into my bag and pulled out a small digital recorder. I set it gently beside my water glass. The room stilled. "Before we go any further," I said, calm as moonlight, "I think it's only fair you hear this." Click. "Just leave her there. She'll crawl back eventually, they always do." My stepmother's voice, clear, cold, and unmistakable. The audio crackled slightly, but her tone cut like a scalpel. "Don't worry about her, girls like that, they don't have anywhere else to go." The room went silent, no one reached for their wine, no one breathed. Roger Hemsley's smile broke first. He leaned back in his chair, like the floor had shifted beneath him. "I wasn't aware of this," he muttered. "I was," I said. I pulled a sealed envelope from my coat pocket and placed it in the center of the table. "Inside," I said, "you'll find my formal withdrawal from all discussions, collaborations, and obligations. Legal or personal." My stepmother was pale now, fingers trembling against the stem of her glass. No, just one word, final, unarguable. "I came back to end this," I said quietly, "not to forgive it." I stood. No drama, no fury, just stillness. They had left me shaking on a bench with nothing but a ripped bag. And a name they didn't think was worth remembering. Now they sat, frozen in the wreckage of their own empire. surrounded by candlelight and false smiles, while I walked out, untouched. The door shut behind me with a soft click, and just like that, it was done. The house sat on the edge of a wooded hill, far from city lights, where silence felt clean instead of cruel. There was no gate, no intercom, just an old gravel path, a wraparound porch, and a small sign at the base of the mailbox, "The Quiet House." Inside, a record played soft jazz, vinyl crackling beneath the piano. The fireplace hummed, a kettle whispered on the stove. I sat on the floor beside the hearth, barefoot, wrapped in a cardigan older than my business license. In my hands, a stitched duffel bag, the same one from the bus stop. Frayed, faded, but never thrown out. Inside, I found what I knew was still there. The original bus ticket, smudged with time, crumpled but legible. One way, nowhere in particular. I held it for a moment, and then I fed it to the fire. Watched it curl, blacken, and disappear. Outside, my dog barked once, chasing nothing. A girl from the local high school would be arriving soon for her mentorship session. One of the 10 I offered every season for girls who had been left behind in one way or another. Some wanted to be chefs, some writers. One said she just wanted to build something no one could take away. I smiled when she said that, because I knew exactly what she meant. I poured the tea, opened my journal, and wrote 6 words across the top of the page. They left me at a bus stop. Then I flipped to the next page, blank, waiting. Now I pave the highway.